There's producer Steven. He got some sort of medal. I'm not sure what's going on with a headband.
He came in first place.
Yeah.
Why does he look like he's about to fight with Che Guevara?
Yeah, I know, exactly. He's like an extra at the Karate Kid or something like that. I don't know what's exactly going on. He's ready to go to a low-rent rave. But so producer Steven, he is resting today. I don't know if it's a well-earned rest day, but yeah, he is resting. He ran a marathon.
He ran the marathon. That's pretty well earned.
He ran the marathon, but I had to walk to get my own water today. So
fair.
Not all.
That's fair.
We all have our crosses to bear.
Fantasy Football Happy Hour with Matthew Berry, served by Applebee's.
Welcome to the Fantasy Football Happy Hour. Connor Rodgers, Matthew Berry, Jay Croucher. Guys, we really are the worst.
Honestly,
we really are the worst.
It's called the League of Assholes for a reason.
Yes.
If we're being honest with you. Backup producer Pete is in the chair today, and as he was playing that clip, he literally said, "You guys are a bunch of," and he didn't use the word asshole, but he might as well have. He used a different word that I don't know if I'm allowed to say.
No, definitely not.
But anyway, it was not a nice word. No. It was a word with negative connotation, and also a word that was accurate. Just to be clear, it was very accurate. Poor Steven. Steven ran his ass off. Like, running a marathon is hard. I can't even contemplate running a marathon. Right? I fell asleep on the couch in the third quarter last night.
Right.
You know what I mean? Now, I woke up in time to see the fourth. But my point is that Steven went out there and did something really healthy. He accomplished a goal. And what do? We crapped all over it.
Yep. Now, to be fair, I go the other way. I'm told that Steven didn't even win the marathon. He didn't even come first.
This is true.
That was a participation medal.
Yeah, it was a participation medal. You get them when you're in second grade.
That's right.
All four.
Right. How many of those does Rio have?
Yeah, she gets them all the time.
Right, of course.
Yeah.
Lining the
Two-year-old
walls.
preschool.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
basically what Steven did. Unbelievable.
All right, so we're right back to it, Steven. You're just getting crapped on once again.
Why don't you win next time, Steven?
That's what you should do. Is we go home and get your daughters and get a little headband around them and have them hold up their little participation medals, just like what Steven did, and just do an exact photo, like just mocking Steven.
It's the exact same thing outside of the 26.2 miles that separate them. Yeah.
That have kept him on the IR for the last 2 days, by the way. This show's got to keep rolling. We had to call it Pete. Think about that.
Think about that.
Cooper Rush style.
That's how desperate we are. We're the Dallas Cowboys. We're like, Pete, get off the bench. Get in here.
Patrick Mahomes seemed like he tore his Achilles and his ACL
really
in the same play.
Right.
And then came back and led them down the field.
Yeah,
Meanwhile, Steven goes for a little run around the block. Can't come to work for a couple of days.
We're still missing him. This is ridiculous.
No one's heard from him. No one's heard from producer Steven, so we'll see what.
But we're still here.
We'll see if he decides to show up after he hears this too. By the way, he may just say, screw you guys, I'm out of here. But next thing you know, like Sims Unbuttoned has 3 producers.
Right. Everybody seems to be working on Pro Football Talk and Sims Unbuttoned.
No one wants to work with us. Like everyone just all of a sudden Sims and Pro Football Talk are like the most produced shows in the history of television, and we're just here left to our own devices.
We'll still get waiver wires done.
Yeah, we'll get it done.
Away.
Yeah,
it's waiver wire day. Before we get there, and we will talk Monday Night Football, by the way. Matthew did wake up, so we can talk about that. Back to the futures. We always do on Tuesdays, our futures bets at the end.
And by the way, I just want to, I don't know if this is where you were going, but I just want to, I just want to point this out. I don't know if you guys see this sticker, this proudly earned sticker, because I voted today. Now, Jay and Connor, I'm going to assume they're doing it after the show, but everyone who votes drinks for free today, assuming you are legally allowed to vote in the United States. No children try to vote or anything like that. But if you are eligible to vote, you must vote. It is your civic duty. It is your patriotic duty. So I am pleased telling you, whoever, I don't care who you vote for. I mean, I have an opinion. But whoever you vote for, it's important that you do exercise that right.
Yep. Unfortunately, I cannot vote as I'm not an American citizen yet, but I urge you, please vote for Damar Hamlin, Comeback Player of the Year. It's not too late.
Let's try this again.
Yeah, it's never too late.
After the Joe Flacco fiasco?
Yeah, exactly.
Never Flacco.
Exactly. There's still time.
I basically decided to vote for the candidate that texted me the least. Because my phone's been blowing up for 3 months.
The commercials,
from
the
everyone.
text.
Every single party is blowing up my phone left and right, begging me for money. So I just basically counted and said, all right, who's the...
Who left me alone?
Who left me alone?
I like this strategy.
Yeah, exactly.
I might actually adopt this.
I will. Yeah. No, I've already voted. I'm informed on the issues, and I have chosen a candidate that I feel matches my own personal feelings.
If there wasn't enough going on, by the way, it's the week of the NFL trade deadline. So we have a lot of news.
And we've already had 2 trades this morning prior to taping. We'll see if anything else that comes in during the show.
Yeah, we'll mix in a lot of trade news throughout Waiver Wire.
And it's a Tracksuit Tuesday suddenly? Look at Connor switching it up.
It's a loose one. I like keeping everyone on their toes.
He's going with the Jeremy Renner and the town look.
There we go. Nice.
Just throwing it into the mix.
I'll take that. That'll work.
Yeah, don't try and rub Fenway Park with Ben Affleck.
You would never see me again.
There's a little bit of that. That's a good call.
Yeah, thank you,
that's actually a very good pull.
No, I've started well. Well.
All right. Well, I think that's the peak of the show. So let's jump into Waiver Wire. We'll start with wide receivers today. And as always, a reminder of the notable bye weeks for the pass catchers. DK Metcalf, who's been banged up. Tyler Lockett. Jackson Smith-Njigba, who was just tremendous last week.
Destroyed Pete in the League of Assholes.
So if you're riding the high of what JSN did for you, well, you're going to have to come back down as Seattle is on the bye. Same with the Packers, Jaden Reed, Romeo Doubs, Jacoby Myers, and Brock Bowers with the Raiders.
This is a brutal.
This is a tough one. And
it's a brutal week, by the way, just for people that care about me, and I assume that's only me. But David Njoku and Jackson Smith-Njigba will be on the bench this week for me when I have to face Stupid Dev.
Oh, you're done.
A Stupid Dev who's crushing our league.
You're fried.
He's in first place. I'm currently in third. You're in second. Pete.
We had a slugfest.
We had a slug
this week.
You had a brutal. And by the way, poor Adam, producer Adam, lost by less than a point.
Love to see it.
Anyway, audio Adam. Anyway, I got my work cut out for me with Stupid Deb. All right, but so a lot of big name wide receivers on the waiver wire. So a guy that I think is suddenly pretty interesting is Xavier Legette. Because regardless of whether it's Bryce Young or Andy Dalton under center for the Carolina Panthers, they have a semblance of a competent passing attack. And with Deontay Johnson now in Baltimore and Jonathan Mingo in Dallas, we'll get to that in a second.
That's the real thing that November 5th will be remembered for.
Exactly.
For
a 4th round pick.
Exactly. That's the biggest news of November 5th, that Jonathan Mingo now goes to the Cowboys. But in all seriousness, guys, Xavier Legette has now very quietly scored in 3 of the past 4 games. He's got a 22% target share over the last 2 weeks, at least 6 targets in both games once Deontay Johnson left the team as well. Over the last 4 weeks, by the way, he plays the Giants, and in the last month, New York allows the highest catch rate to opposing wide receivers. So I think Legette, especially by the way, that there's rumored that Adam Thielen could be on the block for the Panthers as well.
Feels that way.
I mean, that he doesn't make sense for the Panthers as where they are for an organization, but he certainly could provide some veteran help for a team in need. And then you've got Jalen Coker there as well. We kind of like Jalen. I'm a cokehead.
Wow.
Okay. For example, I kind of like Jalen Coker.
We can get behind that one.
Yeah, exactly.
All right.
Cokeheads unite.
You get him on your waivers, you could rename your fantasy team the Cokeheads.
I'm just saying. Yeah, he's had double-digit fantasy points in both games that he's seen at least 4 targets, and it feels like moving forward, this is who it's going to be in the receiving game. It's going to be Legette, Coker, and Jatavian Sanders, who's coming off a nice game. We'll talk about him when we get to tight ends. I always had a soft spot in my heart for David Moore. I always thought he never got enough run in Seattle. They're going to go with a youth movement, rightfully so, in Carolina. And so I do think there is fantasy value to be had in Legette, Coker, and Sanders at the tight end as well. Legette available in 78% of leagues. Now, he does have a bye in 2 weeks. Giants this week, then a bye. But, Kansas City and Tampa Bay after that, all teams that they should be throwing against.
Indeed. And you mentioned whether it's going to be Andy Dalton or Bryce Young. Look, Dave Canales can pretend that there is uncertainty. Bryce Young is going to be starting this game. He has to start against the Giants. It would be insanity to go back to Andy Dalton. This isn't like the Richardson-Flacco thing where I think the Colts are fighting for a playoff spot, and I think there might be some other stuff around Richardson. But, Bryce Young, you spent the #1 pick on the draft. He just had probably the best game of his career in terms of how he looked. You're going to bench him with the season already gone? Bryce Young, he has to start. So I would go forward under that assumption.
Another wide receiver on our
and again, good for Bryce Young.
Yeah, he looked good. He looked good.
It's the best he's really looked. The most confident he's looked in a long time.
He was in the middle of the field. He just didn't look rattled. In his first 2 starts, he looked rattled.
And he made some legit NFL pro throws. Yep. He made some legit, okay, all right, Bryce Young. Yeah, there was a couple moments there where you were like, oh, yeah, okay, Bryce Young, there we go.
Right, why he was the #1 overall pick.
Yep.
And, this quarterback class for next year, guys, I'll tell you right now, it doesn't look great. These teams that need to figure that out, you got to get the answer, whether you're going to try this again with Bryce Young or we're going to go all in on a class that is not like last year's.
just since you brought it up very quickly, do you like Cam Ward, Sanders?
Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders probably both go in the first round. After that, a lot of projects. Jalen Milroe, Quinn Ewers. It's not guys you feel great about, honestly.
I'm out on Milroe.
I watch a lot of Alabama football, obviously, because my kid goes there. I love the Tide, Roll Tide. Milroe, 3 times a game, Milroe does something that just makes you want to tear out your hair. I mean,
yes.
I had a full head of hair at the start of the season.
Right. Thanks to Jaylen Milroe.
Football. This is the result. Anyway, Milroe also makes some brilliant plays.
Yes. That's the enigma of him.
There's something great in there. But
right.
there are just 2 or 3 boneheaded plays where you're just like, come on.
Yeah.
Anyway, but we'll have plenty of time
for
you to break down the quarterback class next year. But I'm with you. It is a weak quarterback class. For those of you in dynasty leagues, superflex leagues that are kind of looking towards next year, it doesn't feel like nearly as strong a class overall as last year. This was a great rookie class.
Yeah, we were spoiled in dynasty. Our next wide receiver on this list, Quentin Johnston, is 84% available. The Chargers have the Titans. Quentin Johnston, one of the many players that got a game ball from Coach Harbaugh, thanks to his 4 catches for 118 yards and a touchdown against the Browns here, Jay. Quentin Johnston's quietly really turned things around after a brutal rookie season. Yeah,
he's been, the first 2 games in particular, there were really encouraging signs. He scored 4 touchdowns on the season. And now, yes, he did have the 66-yard touchdown against the Browns on a bit of a broken play, but still
completely busted coverage.
Yeah, a bit might be doing a bit of work there. But still, even outside of that, he had an additional 52 receiving yards. So the key with this is that they're just throwing the ball more, and Justin Herbert just looks healthier. He looks like Justin Herbert. Herbert's been playing at a really high level since he came off the bye. So I think with Quentin Johnston, he's going to be in the mix to be Justin Herbert's number 1 wide receiver on a week-to-week basis, and that alone is enough to be rostered.
First game back from ankle injury, has a 19% target share. You like that? I think we thought this team would be so run heavy, and they're certainly more balanced and more run heavy than most teams in the NFL, but they're definitely throwing some. And we like McConkey, but other than McConkey, there's no one else in that passing offense that's demanding targets.
No.
Right? They don't have a Kelce. They don't have a tight end like Will Dissly. We like Will Dissly. Will Dissly's a nice little player, but it's not like I got to find a way to get 8 targets to Will Dissly. It's going to be QJ and Ladd McConkey. That's the passing offense. We are seeing some signs of life from Josh Palmer, who's now got 3 straight with 60 receiving yards, but on the season just has a 13% target share. Definitely feels like that's the kind of the pecking order there. It's McConkey and QJ, and then Josh Palmer is the 3rd wide receiver. QJ out there in 84% of leagues, gets the Titans, then the Bengals and the Ravens. So nice schedule coming up, especially Bengals and Ravens, 2 teams you can pass on left and right.
Over in Jacksonville, Parker Washington taking advantage of an opportunity after Christian Kirk is lost for the season. He's 96% available, Matthew. They got the Vikings, so you could throw on a little bit. Parker Washington had 6 targets last week, and got to mention Gabe Davis also missed week 9. So this group got thin quick.
He did, but one of the reasons why Christian Kirk was on the trade block, prior to him injuring his collarbone and being out for the year, but he was widely rumored to be one of the guys to be on the move, him and Deontay Johnson. And one of the reasons why the Jaguars wanted to move on from Christian Kirk is that they're really excited about what they have from Parker Washington. Talking to some guys I know around the team, they really like what they've seen out of Parker Washington in practice, on special teams as well. He plays in the slot, obviously, but to your point, 94% route participation last week. He was out there a ton. He got 39% of the Jaguars' team air yards, and it's a nice matchup with Minnesota, who over the last 4 weeks, they allowed the 3rd most fantasy points per game to opposing wide receivers. To the extent that any Colts pass catcher did anything against the Vikings last week, it was Josh Downs, their slot guy. I do think Parker Washington, given how much the Jaguars have to throw on a weekly basis, and the fact that, yes, Brian Thomas is going to get his, and you've got Ingram, but Parker Washington is a viable in leagues that play PPR. I wouldn't go after him in a standard league, and he's got less value in half PPR, but he's going to be their slot guy.
Ricky Pearsall also makes the cut here, guys. He's got that Bucs secondary that you can really throw on, Jay. 72% available for the rookie. 4 targets against Dallas. He did catch all 4 of them for 38 yards. He also had a carry for 39 yards. Pearsall slowly getting phased into the San Francisco offense.
Yeah. Now, I think the thing with Pearsall is that to be viable and to be a flex guy, I think he needs an injury to one of Debo, Jennings, Kittle, or McCaffrey, who we're expecting back this week, because McCaffrey is going to take a lot more passing game usage than Jordan Mason was previously. Now, the good news is that all 4 of those guys have been hurt already this year. At least the good news is for Ricky Pearsall's upside. And so I think that there is scope for him to provide value. And if he can be, there are worlds where he could be the wide receiver 2 in a Kyle Shanahan offense with Brock Purdy at quarterback. So he's just one step away from that. And I mean, do you think there are worlds where he could supplant Juwan Jennings as the number 2 guy?
It's probably the plan when you look at what the Niners are dealing with, knowing that they had a lot of financial decisions in this room. They used a first-round pick on Ricky Pearsall. Like, how quickly we forget. So the question is, do they want him to do that this year, or was this a pick where they were thinking long-term? Because when Jennings gets an opportunity, he's flashed big-time ability.
He's been great. Jennings has been great, but this is an offense that was Ayuk and Kittle and Debo Samuel. So it's an offense that has supported 3 fantasy-relevant pass catchers in the past, and so could that be Debo, Jennings, and Kittle, or does Ricky Pearsall take this job over? We'll see. It's worth noting that in the 2 games since he's returned, right, he has a 16% target share. He has a 77% route participation. So he's out there a decent amount. Again, he's 4th on the list in a week where our wide receivers aren't as strong as they have been in some previous weeks. But it's a nice matchup against Tampa Bay on a short week. Tampa Bay obviously playing last night, and they give the 6th most fantasy points to opposing wide receivers. I think the upside of both the Niners offense and Ricky Pearsall's talent makes him worth a roster spot if he's available.
Back to the Bucs here, guys. We'll talk more about them with last night, but Sterling Shepard available in 93% of leagues. All the injuries they've dealt with, Matthew, to their pass catchers. Shepard is one of the guys getting involved now. 5 targets, 48 yards against a good Kansas City defense.
Yeah, for sure. Now, no Jaylen McMillan in this game either. He was a scratch just before the game. So again, no Evans, no Godwin, no Jaylen McMillan. I mean, they're down to
Cade Otton.
It was Cade Otton, and and then there's Cade Otton. Trey Palmer was out there as well. But yeah, Sterling Shepard is somebody that's going to run a lot of routes and get a decent amount of target share, especially from the slot. I bring that up because they play the Niners this week, and the Niners allow the 5th most yards per game to slot wide receivers. And so Shepard, who last night led all Buccaneers wide receivers in both routes and target share, suddenly becomes interesting on kind of a 1-week rental basis, and we'll see what happens against the Niners. Then they're on a bye, and then after the bye, they're at the Giants, but you figure Mike Evans is back at that point, and so if you need kind of a 1-week rental, Shepard becomes viable in a deeper league.
Yep. Our last wide receiver here, guys, Noah Brown, obviously the man famous for the Hail Mary catch, Jay, but
for eternal Commanders legend.
Yes.
About whatever he does the rest of his life.
Noah Brown will never pay for a meal in Washington, D.C. again.
Indeed.
But very quietly against the Giants, 6 targets, and he turns it into 5 for 60. They got the Steelers this week, and then the Eagles on Thursday Night Football.
Yeah, and look, he is, of the Commanders' wide receivers, Terry McLaurin leads the team in snaps naturally, but Noah Brown is second. And he is the wide receiver 2 for Jaden Daniels, who is a top 10 quarterback in the NFL, I think
absolutely.
Pretty clearly at this point. And so the matchup against Pittsburgh, we'll say like the Steelers secondary isn't super scary. The pass rush is scary, but if you can evade the pass rush, it's not like these corners are terrifying. So I think it's a reasonably favorable matchup. The Commanders, by the way, inching towards being 3-point favorites over the division-leading Pittsburgh Steelers.
That's
so
crazy.
The market thinks the Commanders are real and legitimate. Which is horrifying to say, but that's right. The Commanders are 7-2. It's unbelievable.
It really is.
They won 4 games last year. I understand.
Even in my wildest dreams, I didn't think we'd be. I thought we had a shot at winning 7 games this year.
You're 4-4. You're 11-6. It's unbelievable.
No, I mean it's the fact that they'd be favored against the Steelers. The game's in Washington, but still, I mean the Steelers are playing really good football, But so are my Commanders.
They'll be favored in 3 of the next 4.
Yeah.
They're at Philadelphia on a short week, so they won't be favored in that one.
Right.
But they'll be favored. They're favored against the Steelers. They'll definitely be favored against whatever's left of Dallas right now in Tennessee.
No Dak Prescott for that game in 3 weeks, which helps. They're like,
I don't know if it helps actually. We'll get to that.
It helps. Let's not get crazy now.
Cooper Rush propaganda.
Exactly.
Dak did finish second in
the spirit of Election Day. Cooper Rush propaganda.
Fair enough. False narrative. Right. I will say that Noah Brown. Who, by the way, could use Noah Brown? The Cowboys.
Oh boy, here I knew it was on a platter.
The Cowboys. The Cowboys could use a guy like Noah Brown. He's a good wide receiver. It's unfortunate that they weren't able to acquire him. But, Noah Brown, 31% target share last week. He's now had 6 targets in 3 of the last 4 games. Obviously, everyone wants to talk about the Hail Mary catch, but they've been looking for a number 2 wide receiver. At the start of the year, people thought it was going to be Jahan Dotson. He gets shipped off to Philadelphia after a bad camp. Then they think, well, maybe it's going to be Diami Brown, who had some nice moments in preseason, and they were rolling out Olamide Zaccheaus as well. But no, Noah Brown has really started to, he joins this team and has really started to find a rhythm and a connection with Jaden Daniels, the Hail Mary aside. That was a crazy play. But, he's available in 98% of leagues, and I do think the Commanders are becoming an offense that you want multiple pieces of.
To recap, Matthew's top wide receiver waiver targets for Week 10. Of course, the rookie first-rounder and Xavier Legette is at the top. He's got the Giants this week. Still available in 73% of leagues, which is surprising.
That's the Germany game, by the way. I just would take a moment here to apologize to Germany. I mean, that's what we're sending them. Panthers, Giants.
We send them Panthers, Giants.
Sorry, Germany.
It's not what our sport actually looks like. Yeah. Quentin Johnston against the Titans, 84% available. Parker Washington now replacing Christian Kirk. He's got the Vikings. First-rounder Ricky Pearsall against that Bucs secondary. Sterling Shepard getting some more action. He's got the 49ers. And then Noah Brown, who's become a thing for the Commanders' passing attack against the Steelers. He's 98% available. So if you're in a league of assholes situation, you might be in the Noah Brown market right now.
You
might be competing for Noah Brown. Yeah. All right, let's go to the running backs. Here's the notable running backs on a bye week, and this list is really tough, guys. You are going to be without Kenneth Walker, Josh Jacobs, Alexander Madison, Zach Charbonnet, and Nick Chubb.
Yeah, I also have Ken Walker. Stupid Dev is going to kill me.
Yeah, he's going to crush
He's going to crush me like a grape. I'm going to get slapped around like a grape.
Dev's revenge for last year's championship.
Dev's revenge, absolutely.
Yes, revenge for Juwan Johnson.
Exactly right.
The Juwan Johnson game. Who could forget? Yeah. Well, with that, we start with Jaylen Warren. He's got your Commanders, Matthew, still available in 58% of leagues.
Which is stupid.
People just completely forgotten about Jaylen Warren.
Everyone out there is like Tony Romo. They don't realize that Jaylen Warren exists and that he's good.
Wow.
You heard me?
Former Cowboys and current Cowboys just copping it.
Oh, good Lord.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, but
no, don't apologize.
That was a swing in the
miss.
No,
don't Jason Kelce apologize. There's no need for that.
Absolutely. I mean, like you can't call a playoff game for the Steelers and not know who Jaylen Warren is. No apologies there. But unlike Mr. Romo, we here do in fact know who Jaylen Warren is, and we have for a long, long time. He's really talented. He's been talented for a long time, and I think people forgot about him this year because he was injured in the preseason. I feel like we've talked about him in the show for like the last couple of weeks, but continue to increase his touches. He's now got 25 touches over just the past 2 games. That includes 5 red zone rush attempts as well. 4 of the last 5 games, he's got a double-digit target share on the Steelers as well. Worth noting that my Commanders allow 5.2 yards per carry to opposing running backs. That's most in the NFL. We know what the Steelers want to do. They want to run the ball. They're going to, under Arthur Smith, they're going to run it with Najee. They're going to run it with Jaylen Warren. Both guys are going to be involved, and because Russell Wilson is their quarterback, he's not as prone to duck it and run the way Justin Fields was. So he's much more open to dumping it off or handing it off to these 2 guys. Najee Harris is obviously rostered pretty much everywhere, but Jaylen Warren is out there in almost 60% of leagues, and it's ridiculous. As you see the numbers on your screens, you're looking at over double-digit touches a game. He played 40% of the snaps against the Giants, and I think we're going to get to a spot where it's really 50-50, or maybe it's 55-45. Credit to Najee Harris. He's looked as good as he's ever looked in his career. He really has.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to know from you, Connor. Do you think Najee Harris has materially improved as a player? Because he's got career high yards per carry, career best PFF grade. He certainly just looks better. He's breaking more explosive runs. It's not this like Najee kind of run into the middle for
he no longer looks like Trent Richardson.
Yeah.
Right.
Do you think he's gotten better, or is it just the situation?
I don't know if it's health or what it is. This is the player he was coming out of Alabama, and there was flashes of it as a rookie, but I agree with you. This is the best he's looked, and I think if I'm the Steelers, I'm thinking that I want him to look like this when we're playing the most meaningful games of our season, which means more Jaylen Warren right now, because the beauty of Najee Harris is that he's healthy, is that he's physical, and he's more explosive, which means you can't – I know Arthur Smith loves to do this, but you can't turn around and get Najee 25 touches a week. Yeah. Jaylen Warren's going to be really involved because of that.
Yep. Yeah. Look at to your point, the latter part of their schedule, like everyone, they have a bunch of division games. They're in a division with the Bengals who are still kicking, and obviously you've got the Ravens.
Twice.
They've got the Ravens.
Best run defense in football.
And even though the Browns aren't in it, the Browns are going to be,
they're going to be annoying down the stretch.
They're going to be a pain in the ass. They're annoying. Yeah, 100%. It's still a good defense.
Yep.
and Jameis has given them, life. Like they're actually,
life adjacent.
I just mean like it's now a competent offense.
Yes.
It wasn't
competent
before.
Adjacent.
Competent. It's fair. All right, fine. I'm trying to be nice. It's election day. Trying to be anyway.
All right, we move over to the very complicated 49ers backfield. And the golden question we all have is Christian McCaffrey on track to play this week? We got to hear GM John Lynch speak about that on the Tim Kawakami show. Take a listen.
I sure hope so. Christian's passed every part of the test in our plan. Over bye week, he stayed here with our trainers. I happen to, how do you come to work on the bye week? You come when you got guys like him working out and you want to see it. I sat up in my office and watched from afar. He looks great. He's responded well. Now we got to put him through that test, responding to, a safety coming up and taking one side of leverage away, and he's got to make a cut, those type of things. And can he respond in a good way? Can he feel healthy enough? Can he feel like he can go make an impact and handle the volume that we've put on him? If so, we won't hesitate to play him.
My summary? We'll see.
Yeah, that was a lot of words to say, like, we don't know yet. I think he plays. They need him to play. They need him to play. He's been designated for return. There was thoughts that he might play before the bye. They held him out. And obviously, if he can't go, the assumption would be that Jordan Mason would go. But we don't know about the health of Jordan Mason yet. So it's worth looking at Isaac Guerendo, because if they don't activate McCaffrey, if he doesn't respond well to after, he practices some and it flames up or flares up again and Mason isn't ready to go, then Isaac Guerendo, who's had 2 games this year. He's got 2 games where he's gotten into the match and he's gotten double-digit touches. He's averaging 14.8 fantasy points per game. He's averaging over 6 yards per carry. We've seen kind of the big explosive plays, and you sort of want the 49ers starting running back, whoever that is.
Yeah. And now you need 2 injuries for Guerendo to really
Correct.
become a thing. These guys get hurt all the time. I've watched Jordan Mason on the sidelines with his helmet on, not coming into the game a lot.
He killed my parlay. 2 other,
his shoulder's been a problem.
Yeah, we got the Kittle touchdown. We had everything going, and just I needed 60 yards from Jordan Mason, and Guerendo gets 80. Like he'd easily, if Jordan Mason could just stay on the field, we'd have hit the parlay on Football Night in America. But of course, Jordan Mason, his shoulders made of paper mache. Yeah, he's made of paper mache, and honestly, it had to happen. I was so hot. I could not miss last year. Like I hit all of my bets down the stretch. Like I went something like 9 of 11 down the stretch. It was just like red hot. So it had to autocorrect.
I
and now
passed
it's like,
my comeback player of the year curse across the table to you.
My powers are yours.
And now you are beset with the curse.
I am beset with the curse. It's very upsetting.
How do you break that curse?
I don't know.
Do I have to burn a chicken?
Yes.
Backup producer Pete, look up. Do I need to Big Show, research that for me right now. Just if I have to burn a chicken or whatever I have to do to break the curse.
Please Google how to lift the curse.
I just think it's the balance of life. The Commanders are finally good and have a franchise quarterback. What did it cost? Everything.
Yes,
everything. Yeah, exactly. It's the Thanos thing.
Yeah.
Thanos meme. Right, exactly. What did it cost? Everything. It's just me throwing like my DraftKings app into the water. Because it's just like, by the way, it's worth it.
Take that trade every day.
I'll take that trade every day. My Commanders are going to play a playoff game. They might host a playoff game. Yeah, they got a chance to be in the divisional round.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The NFC is very winnable.
Very winnable.
We could be watching the Commanders in the Super Bowl in New Orleans. It's not crazy.
Well, listen, it's definitely within the range of outcomes that the Commanders could be at the Lions for the right to go to the Super Bowl.
Sure.
That's not crazy.
Not at
I don't
all.
think it's likely, but I don't think it's crazy.
Set the
either.
odds.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think they're 10-1 to win the NFC, so that means like a 9% chance that you're in the Super Bowl. You'd take that.
I'd take
I'll tell
that.
you what, before the season, it was negative percentage.
Right.
There was
Before
no
the season,
chance.
before their win total was like 6.5, I think, before the season.
Yeah, they've already gone over.
They've already gone over.
Yep.
They've already cashed that bet. By the way,
we love the
futures
Commanders.
coming up later in the show. All right.
We'll move on to Ray Davis
You
for
see
the
why I
Bills.
was filibustering here because now we got
we're
Ray
in
Davis.
we're in the Ray
Trey
Davis
Benson.
bracket.
Running back is really weak this week.
Yeah.
This week.
We have a running back on our list here who's 79% available, but is coming off a week where he had 6 touches. The good news is, Matthew, he had 70 receiving yards and a touchdown, so he made some usage of the touches.
When he's gotten opportunities, he's produced. We like Ray Davis as a talent, right? He's now had 4 straight games where he's gotten at least 1 red zone rush. So that's what you're hoping with Ray Davis. if you roster Ray Davis here and you start him, you're hoping he just falls into the end zone. He's also important insurance running back if you have James Cook, or if you happen to be somebody rooting against James Cook and you want to screw over whoever has him in your league. Listen, the expectation he's playing against the Colts is that both James Cook and Ray Davis might get some work. Teams that face Indianapolis this year average the second most running back carries per game. So maybe Davis gets some work in the second half as the Bills might be up. Joe Flacco throws a couple of picks, and
he's known to do that.
Yeah, he is known to do that. Anyway, Ray Davis is 79% available, and I do think given his explosiveness and his potential role in that offense, should anything happen to Cook, becomes interesting.
Yep. Trey Benson kind of in a similar spot, Connor, where, he had the 8 carries. He gets into the end zone against the Bears, but that was a game that they were up big. He's had 10 touches in the past 3 weeks. Do you think there's any scope for Benson unless Connor gets hurt?
That's what you're waiting on, right? It's just this team runs the ball, which is helpful, and that's how he gets the touchdown. He did get 8 carries, but the reality is for Arizona, James Conner just handles such a large workload that Benson's really only viable in a scenario where Conner gets hurt, which he typically does get hurt every year. But it just depends how many players you could actually roster where you're storing Trey Benson.
Most underrated running back in the NFL, James Conner. Just
year after year.
Yeah.
Year after year. Year after year. And every year after year, he's always on my love list because he's always undervalued in drafts. And it's just like all this guy does is there's nothing sexy or interesting about him. But friend of the podcast, James Conner, is
lovely guy. Really nice guy.
Very nice guy. Very nice guy. And his story is great.
It's unbelievable.
It's he's an easy guy to root for.
He went from future first rounder to getting cancer, coming back from cancer, being draftable, and now is one of the most consistent running backs in the NFL for the last half decade.
He's a top 10 running back in the
that's
NFL.
That's really remarkable.
He's an easy guy to root for.
Yep.
An easy guy to root for. Last thing about running backs here, Khalil Herbert, just before we came on air, Khalil Herbert has been traded from the Bears to the Bengals. News out there that Zach Moss is likely done for the year. I don't know if that's been confirmed, but that's what's been reported. Either way, Herbert has a career 4.8 yards per carry. I feel like this is much more about depth replacing Zach Moss than it is any kind of threat to Chase Brown's role. But they haven't wanted to give the full entire role to Brown. So Herbert suddenly has more value in Cincinnati than he did in Chicago, where he's been a healthy scratch and he's third on that depth chart. Whereas now all of a sudden he's one injury away from being the starting running back of a good offense, and if nothing else, probably gets you 7 to 10 touches a game maybe.
Yeah, I don't think Chase Brown is insurmountable in that backfield either. There are worlds where Khalil Herbert could carve out a bigger role. I've always liked Khalil Herbert's work.
Sure.
He's always looked the part.
You have to roster him if you have Chase Brown right now, right?
For sure.
You almost have to.
Yep.
Yeah.
So that's the most noteworthy part because, of course, Khalil Herbert's going to be out there. All right, let's get to the quarterbacks here, and we have more news on this front. Jerry Jones on Dak Prescott with that hamstring. He said it's likely we'll IR him. In other Cowboys news, they acquired Jonathan Mingo from the Panthers for a 4th-round pick. Probably the most
Win now move, all in.
Yeah.
I mean, exactly. Just everyone says, Jerry, you said you were going to be all in and you haven't, and then what do they do at the trade deadline? They go out and they get Jonathan Mingo. There you go.
Devontae Adams for a 3rd, Jonathan Mingo for a 4th.
I want to get in a fantasy league with Jerry Jones.
Are you doing it right now?
Yeah, no, I'm inviting him. No, I pulled up the stats. I want to get this right. Among wide receivers with at least 100 targets since the start of last season, Jonathan Mingo is dead last in yards per target. He's dead last in yards per route run. And by the way, it's not close. It's not like he's barely out of second to last.
It's in his own tier?
He's in his own tier. Jonathan Mingo has been a massive disappointment since he's been drafted, and somehow he gets a 4 in return. The Panthers get a 4 in return. That's what Keenan Allen went for this offseason.
It's crazy.
The Panthers should give a 4 to the Cowboys to take Mingo off their hands.
This is inexplicable. It's shocking.
There is the thought, which I think is a wrong thought, that, it's 18 months removed from him being taken 40th overall. But it's we have a lot more information about Jonathan Mingo.
Here's my problem with that. And I know I'm saying this because I'm not alone on this. I checked. He went 39th overall. I had him 92nd in that draft. Yeah. I was closer to consensus, I would think, than the NFL.
Yeah.
He was drafted 2 rounds earlier than he should have been drafted. And now he gets the return, a good return. That's a good return. This just doesn't make sense.
A season and a half is a ton of new information.
What did DeAndre Johnson go for?
5th.
5th. Same as Hopkins.
Deontay Johnson and DeAndre Hopkins cost a fifth, but Jonathan Mingo costs a fourth.
Yeah. Now, Mingo is 23, to be fair, and theoretically has more upside, but he's also not good.
That's
So,
That's the issue.
The other guys are good. So, yeah.
I mean, but again, like, what's the point of this? What's the point of this trade? Are they throwing in the towel? Is this considered a rebuilding move?
Yeah, it's a youth movement in
Dallas. Is this a
now.
Youth movement for Dallas? Like,
Mingo's
hey, we think
future.
Jonathan Mingo is.
Mingo and Lamb to the moon, baby.
Yeah. They think this is a cheap wide receiver 3 for them for the next 2 years. The problem is I don't think he fills that role, but that's what they think.
That's
it's
what this move says. Like, I mean, like.
Kind of. It's really.
Well, they're committed to Lamb. And they've gotten some nice production out of Jaylen Tolbert. So I feel like this is maybe they just don't think Brandon Cooks is coming back, or they just think Brandon Cooks is done after this year.
Right.
Maybe.
Why is he better? Why is Mingo better than like Jalen Brooks and Kevontae Turpin? Like it just doesn't.
I don't
seem
think
like
he is. Turpin's actually made some nice plays this year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Dallas Cowboys.
How about them Cowboys?
Oh, my
How
Lord.
about them Cowboys?
My Lord. So
Hail the Commanders, hail victory. Sorry, I don't mean to go all Stephen A on you guys, but it is what it is. By the way, I like Stephen A. By the way, I just thought that might have seemed as a shot at Stephen A. I actually really like Stephen A. When I was at ESPN, Stephen A. was great to me. Like I actually really like Stephen A.
if you need a quarterback,
he's known for torturing the Cowboys. Is all I meant.
He's quite good at it.
Yes.
If you need a quarterback, Aaron Rodgers is available in 57% of leagues. He's at Arizona. Rodgers coming off a 3-touchdown week. And let's see.
Hang on. Before we get to Rodgers, can we just talk Cooper Rush here for a second? We just killed in all seriousness. Like that's the actual news. I killed him out. All right. Very quickly on Cooper Rush. He's going to be fine. Is he Dak Prescott? No. But is he a professional quarterback that can run this offense? And for the purposes of what we care about, he's going to be fine. Like he will be able to get the ball in rhythm to CeeDee Lamb and to Jake Ferguson. Look, this is a guy that in his 5 starts, he's had 6 career starts, right? Averages over 213 passing yards per game. He went 5-1, in his 6 career starts. Like he's not a fantasy viable guy. Like he averages under 12 fantasy points per game. He doesn't get you much with his legs, and they're going to probably go more run heavy than they would with Dak. But for our purposes, it's going to be fine. I believe he will. Maybe you downgrade CeeDee Lamb and Jake Ferguson a little bit, but you're still starting both those guys. And maybe what this means here is that they go to Rico Dowdle a little bit more, who actually looked good last week, right? Yeah. And has been involved more in the passing game as well. It's worth noting that in the weeks 2 through 6 last year that Cooper Rush started, CeeDee Lamb averages 16.5 fantasy points per game. He had a 35% target share. Michael Gallup, and the tight ends combined, Schultz and Ferguson had a 19% target share. Gallup had a 19% target share. Supposedly that'd be Tolbert. But it's going to be fine, I guess is my point. Maybe not for the Cowboys, but for our purposes of fantasy football, Cooper Rush is fine.
On the waiver wire for quarterbacks, Aaron Rodgers, Jay, good matchup against Arizona.
No, you talk up Aaron Rodgers. He's your buddy.
Oh, he's my buddy?
Oh, yeah.
You love him.
You love Aaron Rodgers.
I don't know if we are acquaintances.
Well, he's aware of you because you cover the Jets. But anyway, so Aaron Rodgers. Tell America why we should buy into Aaron Rodgers.
Because he realized throwing the ball up in the air and hoping Garrett Wilson makes a spectacular play is a good idea, a better idea than targeting, Xavier Gibson and Alan Lazard. In all seriousness, this is an offense now funneled through Garrett Wilson and Devontae Adams, and that led to great matchups for the Jets. And a sneaky thing here, Matthew, the Jets rank 4th in pass rate this season. So this is a team throwing the ball. They'll do plenty of that indoors against Arizona.
Very quietly, at least 17 fantasy points in 3 of the last 4. Yeah, having Devontae Adams and Garrett Wilson helps. Cardinals and Colts next 2 up for your Jets. 2 teams you can obviously pass against.
Justin Herbert also on the list, Jay, 56% available. He's just been a different player the last 3 weeks.
Yeah, he's looked a lot more like the guy he was, I think, 3 years ago when he had the 5,000 passing yards and was a fantasy monster. He was QB2 that season. He's had at least 279 passing yards, to your point, Connor, the past 3 weeks. So they're just throwing the ball more. The offense is in rhythm. I think getting Rashawn Slater and Joe Alt back just makes this offense look completely different. And then you can notice the difference in fantasy points per game from 10.4 in the first 4 weeks to 18.0 in the last 4 weeks. So I think Justin Herbert is very startable each week. I think he is a low-end QB1, high-end QB2.
Yeah.
Staying in the division, Bo Nix often frequents this list, Matthew. 66% available, still running. And the throwing is a work in progress, but the bottom line is he does enough running that he's fantasy viable.
Since week 5, he's the 5th best quarterback in fantasy. Hasn't always been pretty, but he's the 5th best quarterback in fantasy. I mean, even last week, in a game in which they got completely dominated by the Ravens, he still threw for almost 225 yards. He still had 36 rushing yards. He caught a touchdown. They're just doing a bunch of different things with Bo Nix. And you mentioned the rushing, at least 25 rushing yards in all but 3 games so far this season. 6 different games he's had at least 25 rushing yards. That keeps the floor high. They're going to throw, and they're on the road at Kansas City this week, then home to Atlanta. Both games that they're going to have to be throwing quite a bit. So, Bo Nix is a viable bye-week fill-in and potentially a starter in a deeper league.
Another
if he's still out there.
Another rookie quarterback getting production with his legs, Jay, is Drake Maye. 8 carries for 95 rushing yards. It wasn't a great day for Drake Maye throwing the ball, but he's running and he's looking to run a lot.
Yeah, maybe the biggest delta in the NFL right now is at quarterback in terms of NFL effectiveness and fantasy value might be Drake Maye. Now, he's doing some good things, but he's obviously learning on the job. There's just not many quarterbacks who can go 8 carries for 95 yards. And it's like there was one long run that characterized all of that. He is running the ball, and I think he is viable, in deeper leagues like at Chicago, home Rams. Not the most frightening matchups. Chicago have a good defense, but Maye with his legs is going to provide value.
Daniel Jones, often another rushing merchant, Matthew, and he got back to his old ways. 7 carries, 54 yards, and a touchdown. He also threw 2 touchdowns. Daniel Jones against the Panthers, great matchup.
It really is. Panthers allow 19.3 fantasy points per game to opposing quarterbacks. That's 4th most in the NFL. They also allow touchdown passes at the 2nd highest rate in the NFL. Again, you see it right there on your screen. Last week, Daniel Jones, more fantasy points than Lamar Jackson. 24.4. He was the 4th best quarterback in week number 9. He is running more. He had that impressive rushing touchdown where he threw off 2 defenders, just broke through a tackle as well. They have a bye after they play the Panthers this week, then they have a bye, but then Tampa Bay and Dallas. So 3 of the next 4 are defenses that don't really scare you.
Waiver wire tight ends. We start with Hunter Henry, Jay, 64% available against the Bears. He's been a favorite target of Drake Maye's. 8 targets.
Comes up every week.
Every week. Yeah, it's crazy that he's still out there in over 60% of leagues.
Yeah, 23 targets the past 3 weeks. Any tight end who's getting 23 targets over a 3 weeks span just needs to be rostered. To your point, kind of has that connection with Drake Maye, looking for Hunter Henry over the middle a ton. So, yeah, he's better option. If you have Mark Andrews or whatever, you're better off starting Hunter Henry.
Yeah, since Drake Maye became the starter, he's the 8th best tight end in fantasy on a points per game basis. He's averaging over 13 fantasy points per game. He's at Chicago this week that struggles against tight ends. I was asked on Football Night in America if I would like to do the gritty. They did a social post.
Yeah.
And Deb McCourty and Jason Garrett, Maria, they all did it. Chris Sims did it. Because I love you, America, I said no. I said I do not want to do that. But somebody who can do the gritty is Mike Gesicki. He's played 4 games in which T. Higgins has missed, right? And at the moment, doesn't seem like Higgins can come back this week. We'll find out. But in the 4 games that T. Higgins has missed, he's averaging over 15 fantasy points per game. It's a nice matchup with the Ravens as they allow the 2nd most yards per game to opposing tight ends as well. So Mike Gesicki suddenly very viable, especially if T. Higgins misses once again.
Another tight end here, Jay, in Jonnu Smith, who's making some noise lately. 6 targets, 5 catches, 46 yards. We've kind of laughed at this Miami offense at times. Doesn't look at Jalen Waddle, but they've been looking at Jonnu Smith.
He's supplanted Jalen Waddle as the 2nd option in this pass game. And I think the key here is that last year in particular, Tyreek Hill was just taking so many targets out of this offense. There just wasn't really room for anyone outside of Jalen Waddle. But Tyreek Hill is getting 6, 8 targets a week instead of 12, 14. Then there's just more room for everyone. I think Mike McDaniel really likes to use Jonnu Smith's speed.
Matthew, we brought up rookie Jatavian Sanders. He's got the Giants. You like the matchup. And he's just one of the guys in this offense that the ball has to go to at this point.
They just don't have a lot of bodies out there. And in 2 of the last 3 games, he's gotten over 20% target share. In those games, averaging over 12 fantasy points per game, had at least 60 receiving yards in both. And watching the games, Sanders made some really nice catches in traffic. He made them on the sideline as well. And just, again, the Panthers are going with a youth movement, despite the fact that they had to let go of Jonathan Mingo. But, whether it's Xavier Legette or Jalen Coker or now Jatavian Sanders and Bryce Young under center, they're like, hey, this is going to be the future of our offense. Let's see what we get out of our guys. We got to get them out there. So Jatavian Sanders is going to get a bunch of run. And did you like him as a prospect coming out of Texas?
I did, as a pass catcher. That's why he's fantasy viable. He's really a classic move tight end. Once upon a time, people thought he'd be a first rounder. He didn't run as well as we thought. He is going to be a fantasy thing for the next couple of years because of how skilled he is as a pass catcher.
There you go.
Old friend Juwan Johnson back into the mix here, Jay. 97% available. The Saints are running out of pass catchers just like the Panthers are. Juwan Johnson in the mix.
I keep meaning to send him his championship ring from his stint on Live at Noon of the Cock.
Okay, well, he's about to be the number one pass-catching option in an NFL game. I think for Derek Carr, with Chris Olave expected, he's probably going to miss with that concussion. Rashid Shaheed obviously out as well. He played 51 snaps against the Panthers, and he's a tight end, so he kind of has to be rostered. He's touchdown dependent, and he hasn't scored a touchdown in 8 games, which hurts. Nice. But at the same time, just through volume, just being out there in a game, you expect they're going to need to throw.
And you have Taysom Hill there as well. You know, Taysom Hill, 14 or more fantasy points in 2 of the last 3 games. Had 18% target share, so he'll be involved. A lot of Kamara, dump-offs to Kamara, you know, and then
exciting times in New Orleans.
Exciting times in New Orleans.
3-point dogs in that game, not like the Falcons.
That's crazy. All right. Well, speaking of the Saints, if you need a defense, don't pick them up. Pick up who they're playing. That's the Falcons. 91% available. The Giants defense, they have the Panthers, 94% available. The Lions, they have the Texans. That Texans offensive line is really beat up right now. We don't know yet if Nico Collins is going to be back for that game. 53% available. The Lions traded for Zadarius Smith, by the way, so they got some pass rush help after the loss of Aiden Hutchinson. Speaking of Lions-Texans, Matthew, fantasy football pregame is back on the road this weekend in your home state.
Yeah, heading to Houston. Me, Jay Croucher, Lawrence Jackson, and George Savaricas. We're coming to the home state of Texas. We'll be at the Applebee's at 2959 North Loop West in Houston. Doors are going to open at 9:30 a.m. Central Time. Show will be live on the air from 10 all the way until noon. It is 100% free to come. Just come on out there, say hi. We will take pictures. We will answer your questions. And you get to meet Ma and Pa Berry, my parents. My parents will be there, Jay Croucher. You're going to see
your creators.
My creators.
Unbelievable. I'm looking forward to it. I've never met them.
I know, and I'm sure you have many questions.
I do. How did this happen?
Yes, 1,000%.
How did we get here?
If you have a question for myself, Jay, Lawrence, or George, or my parents, come to the Applebee's once again, free. We can't wait. This Sunday morning, 10 a.m. to noon. The show is on live. You got a chance to be on TV. We'll take questions from the crowd as well. So your chance to be on national TV if you want. Doors open at 9:30.
We're taking our first break. When we're back, we got your Monday Night Football fantasy takeaways from Bucs Chiefs right after this. Jay, what do you like in this game?
Taking Patrick Mahomes over 249.5 passing yards. I think that he has quietly turned the corner. He had 331 against New Orleans, 262 against the Raiders. The Bucs pass defense is atrocious. Players have been going over consistently against the Bucs, so Mahomes over.
And by the way, because of that, I'm also taking Mahomes over 1.5 passing touchdowns. Bucs have allowed 4 touchdown passes in 3 of the last 4. Mahomes has 38 or more attempts in 2 of the last 3.
And I hope DeAndre Hopkins is the one catching them from over 3.5 receptions. Bucs secondary is no good. They want to get Hopkins involved, especially as a possession guy. 3 for 3.
3 for 3.
Fantasy football happy hour parlay. Not even a sweat in sight, by the way.
To be fair, Mahomes needed overtime to go over the passing yards, but that's the beauty of backing it over. You can always get bailed out by the fifth quarter.
This is true. Hopkins cashed early, though.
3.5 blows my mind that was the number.
Yeah, it won't be that low again.
It was the first quarter. No, it will not. It'll be much higher, 6.5, days ahead.
Clearly an effort to get Hopkins involved. It's the second most fantasy points by a Chiefs wide receiver this season. Rashee Rice, of course, had that huge Week 3 game, but still, obviously, Boyd has what's it with
Boyd?
Buoyed by I don't know, lifted. I'm not sure.
Tyler Boyd?
Yeah, Boyded. I'm not sure. I was trying to anyway, but whatever.
Can we void
built
that
up by
segment?
lifted up by the 2 touchdowns, of course, but still, I think 8 for 86, 21% target share, almost a 70% route participation compared with 33% for last week. He's clearly getting more comfortable with the offense, more of an expanded role. wide receiver 2 the rest of the way for me.
How about rapid fire roundtable right here? Mahomes top 10 quarterback the rest of the season?
Yes, confidently.
Yeah, I would agree.
I think he's fixed.
Yeah, getting the weapons back as well. I think borderline top 10.
You think Hop is a wide receiver 2?
Wide receiver 2.
What about you?
Two.
All right, would you rather have, this one's legitimately hard, Travis Kelce or Cade Otton the rest of the season?
Kelce, but close.
Kelce, but close. I mean, better offense, more scoring opportunities, but it's close. And Evans is going to come back. And so, I think Otton's production is somewhat because he's the only guy, and they're going to get Evans back.
Kareem Hunt is a RB what the rest of the season?
Well, Pacheco's coming back.
Exactly. That's the key. He's an RB2 until Pacheco comes back, and then he's basically insurance.
Yep. Shout out to Baker Mayfield and Liam Cohen, by the way. That was a very impressive performance.
It was a gutsy game.
Yes, they should have won that game. They've lost a lot of games that they should have won. Yeah. That's a very good team. They're going to be a tough out in the playoffs, assuming they make it there. And how about Cade Otton, third straight game with 10 or more targets, 20 more fantasy points. He's played without Evans as well. They play the Bucs this week. At least you get one more game of Cade Otton before they go on a bye, and then Mike Evans should be back as well. But over the last 3 weeks, your number one tight end in fantasy football is Cade Otton. We're all Ott heads.
We're taking our last break. Back to the futures right after this. DraftKings Sportsbook is the number one place to bet touchdowns, and new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets instantly. Download the app and use promo code Barry when you sign up. DraftKings Sportsbook, the crown is yours. It's back to the futures time here at the Happy Hour desk. It's where we look at awards, win totals, you name it. Jay, Defensive Rookie of the Year. What do you got?
Going off this screen, going Dallas Turner at 50-1. He was the favorite in the market coming in to the season. He played a huge uptick in snaps for Dallas Turner against the Colts. He had a really strong PFF grade. He had 4 pressures. I think he's getting more assimilated into Brian Flores' defense. I think he can come home like a steam train.
Matthew, what about you?
I'm taking the Ravens over 11.5 wins. They've got 6 right now. I think they're playing as good as any team in the NFL. That offense is unstoppable.
I like the Chiefs versus Lions Super Bowl at plus 700. These are the best 2 teams in football. The Lions are a freight train. Chiefs, I really don't think they're going to lose a regular season game.
It doesn't look that way. It certainly doesn't look that way at all. It's closing time. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. How about going to a voting booth? Go vote. Do your civic duty. For Jay and Connor, I'm Matthew. We'll see you tomorrow. Peace out. Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBCSports.com and RotorWorld.com, and I want to thank you so much for watching whatever it is you just watched, or if nothing else, being too lazy to click out of the autoplay after this video started, after whatever it is you actually wanted to watch finished. But now that you're here, I'd like to take a moment here to ask you respectfully now, okay? I'm asking you respectfully to subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel. You'll get the latest Roto-World fantasy news headlines, all sorts of great shows, including my own Fantasy Football Happy Hour. So go subscribe now. Again, I'm asking respectfully.